This is Franca, and this is Franca's roadmap to success. Isn't she a good-looking shepherd? Now you see a little bit of, if you can see underneath, she's actually losing a little bit of hair. I think it's due to stress. And so the video that we went above of us teaching her to stay in the triggers and desensitize the dog for the triggers for separation anxiety will go a long ways towards helping. You don't like that either, huh? I could tell that. See, you saw her ears go back, so I touched her back here earlier. She was kind of scratching herself, and she gave me kind of her teeth. She didn't growl, but she bared her teeth, which is not aggression. She was saying, I don't want you touching me there. I could have been scratching her too tough, but when I did it earlier, just when you're watching this on playback, her ears and she kind of shut down. So a dog stops moving or slows down. Slow movement is a big warning. I really don't like what you're doing. I'm slowing down all my energy so I can pay attention to you. So that's not what we're here for, but learning how to read your dog's body language is really important. So we started off talking about exercise. Actually, the first thing we started talking about was tips to get her to stop jumping fences. I have dogs that jump fences as well. So if you get a PVC pipe, make sure it's not too thick. And I would get like a 10-foot section, not thick in terms of the thickness, and then cut a line on one side of it so it's like a C. And then basically you take that off and put it on the top of your door, have it cut just exactly for your fence door. And then the other part of your fence is too wide. I don't think you'll be able to get one pulled. You might be able to pull it apart. If you can't, I would just have them put a 2x4, not this way, but this way, along the fence towards the side that's closest to, you're sweet, the side that's closest to the inside of the fence. There we go. And then you put that PVC pipe on top of it. So they can't actually climb it. They really, they don't jump it, they much climb it. And so if we can have that on her, she won't be able to grip, and that'll help her stop getting over that. And I would mention that to the daycare if you decide to. It's a nice little easy tip for them if she's jumping a fence there. Usually it's a chain link fence, and that stops them from doing that as well. Oh, now we're buddies. You're leaning against me. That's a good indication that the dog likes you, but it's also a comforting thing. So she's leaning against me, so if I get up to leave while she's asleep, she's going to feel the difference. Okay, so we started off talking about exercise. The Guardians here do a really good job of exercising her. I show them a dog skiing video, which is the way I like to exercise my dogs. Might not be a bad idea for you guys to try. The bicycle that you're using is fine, but I would, the thing I worry about with the bicycle, if it's always on one side, it's kind of a pain to move it from one side to the other. Then one side of the dog's body gets a little more use, and sometimes can develop more muscle or have more wear and tear. So I like the dog skiing because they're just right in the middle and you can move them on either side. But exercising her before you leave is going to help. It's not going to fix your problem. The solution to the problem is in the video above. We also talked about some rules. She only has a couple of rules, and if a dog doesn't have any rules, it sees you as a peer. If it sees you as a peer, then listening to you is optional. And so the more that we have rules, the more the dog sees us acting like leaders, the more they can be confident in our leadership. And separation anxiety is very much an insecurity. So the more that we are coming across as a leader and the dog sees us acting like a leader through enforcing rules, the more the confidence they have, and then she doesn't think that her responsibility is to be in charge of everything. So some of the rules I went over, first one would be not allowing dogs on the furniture, because it's not being on the furniture, but the higher a dog sits, the more rank or status they have. So sitting at the same height as me says we are peers to her. But in her case, it's even more so because she likes to be touching her guardians like this. This is a little bit, it's endearing, it looks cute. The guardian just took a picture of her doing this with my leg. But at the same time, it is an insecurity. I have to be touching you to feel complete and content. So if she gets practiced at laying on the dog bed over there 7 feet away, that's wonderful practice at being somewhere between that 0 and 100% range of access to the humans. And so toss the treats. The 3 ways I do it is I toss the treat, do this with about 10 treats. Toss it, she's got to put at least one paw on it to get it, and we say the word boba. That's the word the Guardians came up with. And so the second, and I do that about 10 treats, wait for her to vacate, then throw another treat. Next one I do is when she's not paying attention, I leave a treat on there or toss one on there, and so she looks over and sees it and goes and gets it. This is why we want to have a light cream, a white, or a light gray colored dog bed, and she had no pattern. And I'd like to have one a little bit bigger than that if you can, just so she's got to actually take one step on it. The third way I do it is I lure the dog onto a sit or an LO. I put the treat in their mouth and say, boba. So either you toss, you leave one, or lure her onto it. These are 3 ways to entice or motivate her to go there. Once she's going there, after a while, she'll start going there on her own. When she does, then you quietly pull out a treat and you throw it there. So now when I go here, it rains treats. So after a while, that's the progression. Now, if you don't have a treat and she goes over there, just say boba. You can get up and go pet her, but a lot of times that causes the dog to get up and come to you. So and it's not as powerful if you just say the word, but it is a reinforcement as well. Just having some treats, like I said, in your pocket makes it easy. Now, just because you have a treat doesn't mean you have to give her the treat. So if she comes and sits, you give her the treat, then you're out of the treat when you need it to throw it on the dog bed. So your affection is sufficient. Now, remember, whenever petting her, if all things are equal, pet her under her chin. A proud dog has its nose in the air. That's the body mechanic. Insecure dogs have their nose down, and petting a dog on top of the head creates a nose down orientation. So I'd like you to get in a habit of, if all things are equal, pet her on her chin. Now I can scratch her hind legs or her hip or whatever. That's fine as well. But if all things are equal, try to pet her on her chin and avoid reaching on top of her head. And also, you might want to check with like an animal nutritionist. This could also be an allergy sort of issue. So if dogs are chewing and licking themselves a lot of times that's what it is it's some food that's not agreeing with them. So it might be, just like anything else, it's never one thing that causes the problems. There's a lot of little things. But if that's irritating for her after a while, that can amplify other problems as well. So, all right, so not being allowed on the furniture would be rule number one. I would recommend you get the X mats, letter X, M-A-T-S. You're probably going to get about 8 of them for the table, for the couch here, and you put those down, and that way if I want to get up and go to the bathroom, I grab it from underneath the couch, unfold it, and put it where I'm sitting. That way when she walks up, she sees there's a placeholder. And then when I come back, I fold it up and put it underneath. And so that way you can be here and you don't have to police the couch yourself. Also, make sure she doesn't go through a door ahead of you. The guardian, I think the other guardian who wasn't here does a really good job of that. And I have a video on my website if you want to teach her to wait at the door with the door open. Just message me and I'm happy to share. You can go to doggoneproblems.com and click on dog training tips. And a bunch of these, I have thousands of free training videos there for you, and they're all positive reinforcement. Let me see. Another rule is the dog has to sit at the door. I go to the door and I say sit one time. A dog has 3 seconds to comply when you give a command. The more you say it, the less you mean it. You're saying, I'm not an authority figure because I'm not enforcing it. Usually I say if you're speeding down the street and a police officer says, slow down, but doesn't ever give you a ticket and says, slow down every day, after a while, you're like, I'm not listening to that guy or girl here. There's no bite behind their bark. And so, but if the guy gives you a ticket, well, then you learned your lesson and you hopefully won't do that again. You shouldn't speed. All right, so basically, so I go to the door and I say sit one time. There's a treat right here. And if the dog sits within that 3-second window, I open the door. If it doesn't sit within the 3-second window, I walk away, I sit down, and I wait for 1 minute. So you put a timer on your phone or something like that. After 1 minute, this is the beef dried chicken liver or beef dried liver, freeze dried beef liver. Then after I wait for 1 minute, I go back to the door and I command her one time, sit. If she doesn't sit with 3 seconds this time, I'll walk away and sit down for 2 minutes. Next time I sit down for 4 minutes and 8 minutes. Make sure you're seated. Standing looks like you're waiting for her. So what we're saying is if you can't do the smallest thing you can do as a dog and sit, I can't be bothered to open that door. But as soon as you sit, man, that door flies open pretty damn fast. And after a while, yes, it will. And after a while, she'll just go sit at the door as her way of saying, I'd like to go outside, please. And she gives you a nice visual indicator because she's a smarty pants. All right. Another rule is she should not, the guardian should be eating something before they feed her. And come up with, use passive training. Come up with a fun word. Call it your favorite thing on your restaurant's menu or whatever it means, to eat. You go to put her food down. Don't let her have it. Block it. Use the escalating consequences I mentioned to you. Then you eat something in 5 more bites or you eat your actual meal. And then after you get your 5 bites, then you invite her to come and eat her food. When she starts eating, say the command word. So sushi. Every time for 4 months, she takes her first bite of food, she orders with sushi. After I say sushi, she runs in there expecting that means I get to eat. Something else you might want to get her is something called a snuffle mat. Snuffle mat looks like a floor mat with like shag carpeting coming out that's just on turbo. What you do is you put her food and hide it in the shag carpeting. She's got to use her nose to find it and nudge it around. It slows down eating. It makes her feel more confident about herself because she's earning her food versus being given her food. And it's a nice stimulating way for them to burn a little excess energy without going for a walk. So I'd maybe feed her one of her meals every day on the snuffle mat. You can also, when I have puppies, I feed them with these games, but we have a smart dog. They really need mental stimulation. So that you might want to look into treat dispensing toys and games. They have some that like it's things on like a rod and you have to nudge it and then when it flips up and food comes out. There's little puzzles. They have to slide it or knock things over. I like having a Omega treat ball. It's a ball that has a sleeve and a hole with a sleeve on it. So the dog has to nudge it just right to get a couple pieces of kibble falling out. My dog, when he does that, I call it soccer because they look like a soccer player nudging it around. I'm sorry, football. And but the idea is these are ways to help her boost her confidence because she's earning her food, but it's also slowing down the eating process and making it a little bit more stimulating, which would be beneficial. Yes, you like that freeze-dried beef liver. When the humans are eating, she should not be within 7 feet of them. The humans should not be feeding her any food from the plate or from the table. If you do really want to give her something, I use the microwave. It's the only really airtight chamber we have in our home. So chop up the steak bits and leave them in your microwave and then feed it to her the next day in her meal so it doesn't smell in conjunction with your eating and it doesn't come from your plate. Also, when you're cooking food, she should not be allowed in the kitchen, and you can use those escalating consequences. I went over hiss, stand up, march, leash, time out if you need to. You really use more of the standing or the marching to establish the boundary. Now, when you're establishing a boundary, kind of like what I showed you on the stairs, you take a step backwards with your authority, your chest pointed towards the dog. You take 2 steps backwards, 1 with each foot, and stop. Pause for 1 second. When dogs communicate with each other, they put a pause between each movement. So you take a step backwards and pause for a second. Then you take your next step backwards and pause for a second. That way the dog says, oh, you're not just backing up, you're communicating something to me. You don't want me to come up. And one of the things I like, that one of the exercises, we kind of did this, I'm going to describe it for the people who weren't here. When you want to go upstairs, what I would do is have somebody go up and follow you. You go through the gate first on the stairs. The person goes in between you and the dog and then turns on the first step and facing this way. So facing into the room, you walk all the way up the stairs. When the dog stops pacing back and forth and is stationary, the person on the steps goes the next step, left foot, right foot, and pauses. And we pause for a second. If the dog stays put, we left foot, right foot to the next step. As soon as the dog starts to come forward, we start rushing towards, and we never step off the last step. We're always on the first step. So, but you want to rush quickly. And don't wait for her to get 2 or 3 steps up. Really, if her paws are on the ground, this is when you start rushing, when she pulls her foot up off the ground or gets about to sit and starts to take a movement towards it. The sooner you are, the easier it'll be. Eventually, it'll be nice if she can stay down here without a stay command, and the person's walking backwards all the way up the stairs. You're already upstairs. And then the person who's enforcing the boundary is at the top of the stairs. There's nothing but air on all the steps that's stopping her from coming and get you. And she's practicing some self-control. She's practicing discipline, and she's also practicing being alone. So those are really helpful, and that's a wonderful, easy activity when you go to change clothes or grab something out of your dresser or whatever it is. She's practicing being alone. That's the name of the game for separation anxiety. Help them to practice being calm when alone, which is why I would go to Rover or Wags or see if there's somebody in your neighborhood that does dog walking and dog sitting, that you can have somebody come and sit with her. Look for other dog daycares that you can go to for a half day or whatever. Just we want to prevent leaving her at home as much as possible while we're training her to sit, to stay, and do all those things in the dog training video above. We also went over petting with a purpose and passive training. Petting with a purpose is if the dog comes up and nudges you, it's telling you what to do. Leaders tell, followers ask. So if she tells me what to do and I pet her, I'm validating, yes, you're in charge of me. And that contributes to separation anxiety because she thinks she's my leader and I don't listen to her. That stresses her out. So instead, when she nudges you, I want you to tell her to sit. If she's already sitting, ask her to come and sit over here or ask her to lay down. When she sits or lays down, pet her and sit. Say sit or crash or whatever your word is for lay down. Preferably under the chin. You can pet her anywhere you want. Never pet her on top of the head. That'll kind of facilitate a cowering body mechanic. And so when she's, if you tell her to sit, she sits. Pet her on the chin, say sit, and you pet her once to an infinity number of pets, as many as you like. If she doesn't sit within that 3 seconds, pull back, watch some TV, read your phone, check an email, read a magazine. Show her I got other things going on. Show her that if you don't comply, I'm not going to punish you, I'm not going to yell at you, I'm not going to repeat the command, but you don't get the privilege of my attention. After a while, she'll start thirsting for it, and then she'll start coming and sitting in front of you to prepay for that attention. When she does that, you make sure that you do pet her at least once, or and as much as you'd like, and say the word sit and just sit. Remember, the dogs hear the first word that we say, so we say good sit, putting the important word in the least important position. And also sit, sit. Dogs hear inflection, so say it the same every time. Makes it just easier for her. Also come up with a list of the, well, let me finish passive training, or petting with a purpose. So I say paycheck. I consider petting a dog our way of paying them. So if I see someone that I suspect is petting the dog without a purpose, I say paycheck. Even if the person did it right, they have to stop petting, tell the dog to sit. When the dog sits, pets under the chin, says sit, and says, actually, when you opened the door, she stood up, and I continued petting her, but thank you, because I do forget to pet without a purpose. So it's a gentle reminder. And even if you want to pet the dog, she's not nudging you, still tell her to sit. If she doesn't, don't pet her. After a while, she'll start coming and sitting in front of you to prepay for that attention. Now, passive training is basically is kind of a little bit of the lead to what we get to when the dog prepays for attention. But passive training is really when the dog just does things organically on their own. Good behavior that we like. Most of us train our dogs to misbehave. They come to us, we ignore it. They sit, we ignore it. They lay down, we ignore it. They bring us a toy, we ignore it. But as soon as they start barking at the door or chewing the carpet or whatever, we're on top of them. Well, I want to reward the dog for the things that I want. So every time she comes to you, pet her and say come when you didn't call her to. Every time she sits, pet her and say sit. I say crash every time my dogs lay down. Every time she lays down, pet her and say crash or chill or whatever the word is you want to use. Name all of your individual toys. Now the trachea and the bones can all be bones and trachea and all that. But if she brings you a specific toy, name each toy. Call it Roger or Billy or whatever you want to come up with. But now eventually you can say, give me Billy. And she goes and gets you Billy. And then you're like, yeah. So every time she brings you a toy, name that toy and pet her and say Billy if that's the name of that toy. So after a while, so when I bring you the little Gumby looking thing, you say Billy and you pet me. Well, then obviously bringing you the Gumby thing is something you like, and eventually you say Billy and she goes and gets you Gumby and brings it to you. Remember, that's the transition. At first we throw the treats to the dog bed to get the dog to motivate to want to go there. But after a while, the dog goes there on its own, and then we reward them after the fact, and that's important. You want to get to that stage with everything, just about everything. So now you're rewarding the action that you want as opposed to enticing them to do the action. Now the dog has figured this out, and we'll continue to reward them to maintain them continuing to do that. So I come up with a watchword for passive training. I say testify, but some people say recognize or reward. Somebody says reward to me, I just look at the dog, and whatever the dog's doing, I pet it and say the command word. If she came to me, I pet her and I say come. Or if she's standing, I pet her and say come. I didn't see what she did. Somebody else is telling me. I'm just looking at the dog. If she's sitting, I pet her and say sit. If she lays down, crash, and so on. So this will help you get in a habit. Remember, it takes 66 days to form a behavior pattern. So for 3 months, really focus on petting with the verse and passive training and reminding each other. After a while, you get in a habit of doing it. Now, I also say vocabulary if people are using a different version of the command word. Repeat or rerun if you're repeating the word multiple times. So come up with these words to help each other out, and come up with a list of the official command words. We often say a bunch of variants of each command word. Come here, over here, your girl. It's just easier for her if we only use one command word. So if the word is here, then somebody says come, you say, vocabulary, like, here, thank you. Remember, it's all positive, so don't no, I did it right. If you start arguing, the dog's like, well, they're on their own page, I can be on my own page too. We want all the humans to be Watusi, so the dog's like, I better get with them. All right, so that's petting with a purpose and passive training. I went through the escalating consequences. Remember what those are. Message me if you forgot what they are. And then I'd like you to also teach her some tricks or commands. Dogs that have separation anxiety are insecure. People who are confident can brush things off. Insecure people, they fold, they fail, they're just not prepared for it. So the more tricks and commands you can teach her, number one, it's nice ways to redirect her. It boosts her self-esteem because she she learns a new skill or command, and it also deepens the relationship with the person that's teaching her. If you have a mentor, you have respect for your mentor. They guided you through a part of your life's journey, and they hold a special place of reverence for you. Dogs are the same way. So if we teach her how to do rotate and spin, or bang your dead, or stick them up, or army crawl, I call that sneaky. And one of these things go to YouTube. There are all these fun dog training tricks that are easy. Make sure they're positive reinforcement only. The old way of training your dog is punishing the dog for the wrong thing, forcing your dog, jerking the leash, scolding the dog. Dogs with separation anxiety are typically very sensitive dogs. Even if you get give them a verbal reprimand, sometimes that can really decimate them, and that is absolutely contributed to separation anxiety because the dog feels insecure and incomplete, especially if you come home and the dog peed or pooped or chewed something up and you get mad. That really amplifies things. So if that happens, just be like, if you have to yell, go outside and go and put your head on a pillow and do it there, but do it away from your dog so it doesn't know, because your dog is not doing it intentionally. Many, many studies have been shown. People think it's personal. The dog did it intentionally. Studies show after studies it's not intentional. The dog is just, if it chews up your shoes, it misses you so much. I want to taste you, and so your shoe is the closest analog because we have pheromones and we also sweat a lot in those areas. Underwear, t-shirts, and shoes are usually pretty mouthed or chewed up by dogs because that's where we sweat a lot. So the more that you practice those different tricks and commands, the more things you have, and again, you boost your self-esteem and confidence. Same thing with petting with a purpose. It boosts your self-esteem and increases your respect for your authority figures. Is there anything else you want me to go over? I think that's pretty much it.
Could I ask one
Please.
thing real quick? when we're walking her and she's on the leash, she tends to pull a lot in the front, you know. We're trying to get her to stay next to us. What's the best way to kind of
So that
practice
you really
that?
need to train the dog to walk with a loose leash. For some reason, when it comes to dogs, we don't train them how to do things we want them to do, and then we get pissed when they don't do what we haven't taught them. So training a dog with a loose leash is something I'm happy to come back and show you how to do. But basically, the more, I promise you, the more you pull your dog, the more they're going to pull away. Do you use any, like a prong collar, choke chain, or any of those sort of things?
No.
No.
Okay, good. Those things will make it worse, and also create other problems as well. So I can, if you want to work on that, let me know. We can work on it, because whoever's in front is going to be in charge. If the dog walks in front of you, it's perceived itself to be in front of you. If you're doing a job like it's pulling me on rollerblades or a skateboard or something, that's a little bit different. But if it's just walking in front of you, it's going to be more reactive. So there are videos you can look into teaching your dog to walk with a loose leash. But again, if it's pulling the leash or popping the leash, they are programmed to push or pull against pressure. Every time you pull a dog back in position, you're strengthening their pull-out muscle. See my guns? But basically, the idea for the dog is we want the dog to voluntarily want to do it. So the way I do it, we use a kind of a circling technique. As soon as the dog pulls, we do kind of this looping circle. We don't use treats. And after a while, the dog just learns if I just stay in this spot, the walk continues. As soon as I pull in front or pull excitedly towards something, we have to stop. We have to do a stupid circle, and then we have to, And so after a while, the dog learns how to do it on its own. So I'd like you really to focus on this stuff, and I'm not saying that that's not important, because it's being able to tuck your leash in your back pocket, walk down the street, drinking your macchiato, checking out your phone is pretty awesome. And you can get there. I'm happy to help you. But right now, I want you to kind of focus on the stuff that's inside, because you got a lot of stuff to work on. I'd rather have you focus on eliminating the separation anxiety, and then once that's taken care of, we work on that, because again, you don't want to have her practice being home alone, and you probably kind of feel a little bit like prisoners at times, that you have to have somebody watching her, and we had some problems with her jumping the fence at daycare, so now that's not an option. So I'd rather you focus on that. Try to practice, like I said, if everybody in the house is practicing I'd like to see 3 times a day at the stay. Remember, practicing all sorts of different places and desensitizing her for those triggers. You should be able to, within a couple of weeks, get to the point where you're at stay and you go to the bathroom, or you make a sandwich, or you eat dinner, or whatever it is, and then she's practiced building confidence of being alone. All right, well, this really high energy, high impact, crazy bananas dog is Franks, or Franca, and this is Franca's roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.